you'll see like, words and stuff and people making comments or whatever. Usually I try to get people to remember to hold their questions until the very end. Hi. I'm just explaining to Domina Jia that that all of you guys are so polite and so respectful that we don't normally have to worry about trolls, but if there are trolls, that you should just ignore them.
Okay.
Yes. So, welcome everybody. My name is Dia Dynasty. I am one half of La Maison de Rouge. And this is our weekly Periscope. It's Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in New York City. And I'm just going to let you guys kind of, roll in. I see the numbers. Hi, Bruce. I see the numbers increasing. Hi, Neon. Goddesses. Yeah, and then, so today we have, instead of a normal interview, hi, Sockley, we have a story, a personal story about healing and how sex work and BDSM have allowed healing to keep going, to come into our lives, and that would be with Domina Jia. So she's going to be kind of taking the lead, and I'm going to give her center stage with this story, and she's going to tell her story, and all of you guys are going to be very polite and listen to her story. And at the very end, you'll get to answer, or you'll get to ask your questions. So I just wanted to introduce Domina Jia. Can you tell us all of your titles, self-appointed and otherwise,
Sure.
as well as your pronoun,
Sure.
and then how you identify?
Sure. So as far as titling goes, I am an artist. I'm a visual artist. I am a tattoo shop assistant. I do not tattoo. I'm not a professional piercer, but I'm a play piercer. I'm a performer, and sometimes I write. So I'm a sometimes writer.
And she will get to that later, or whenever she feels like it, but thank you for your curiosity. And also, I had the privilege of seeing Domina Jia at a performance in MoMA PS1 maybe a couple weeks ago, with two people that have actually been on this Periscope, Tamara Santibanez, who works at Saved, which is, I think,
Yes.
like in affiliation with you.
Yes.
I don't want to give anything away. And also Yin Q, who is a ritual worker and an ex-pro-dom. Both of them have been on, and so it's really nice to have you on.
Thanks. It's nice to be here. I like that there's a lot of overlap that's happening.
Yeah, it's a
comfortable.
community.
Yeah.
And then you'd already established your pronouns.
Oh, no, not yet.
No? Okay.
So I go primarily by they, them. Those are my most preferred pronouns. But however, when I'm speaking about my practice as a sex worker, I go by she, her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, do you have any other, I guess, orientations and things that you want to just put out there?
I will say that I am not a current sex worker. I'm more in the performative aspect and the public demonstration aspect of my time as a sex worker from 2013 to 2018. And let's see, I guess I can go into a little bit more about the timeline of stuff, but as of today, I am not a pro-dom today.
Sure.
But I am going to be talking about my time as a pro-dom over the past 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, so how would you like to begin? Like, is there an intro, or do you need me to?
I don't know. Well, I guess, yeah.
Let's just hear your story.
Awesome. Thanks. Oh, wow. I get a little shy, I guess, when I speak a little bit So, and I am a little scatterbrained at times, so I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible. But I would say, so in 2013, I'm originally from Hawaii. That's also something I really want to kind of throw out there. I'm very, proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm originally from Hawaii. I grew up there until I was 18. I moved to New York by way of California. And I moved to New York to finish my undergraduate education, firstly in the film industry, but I learned from going to school in that's not my endpoint. I wanted to be a screenwriter, and I graduated from the School of Visual Arts, but not in the film department. And in the time there, I got scouted to become a pro dom.
Whoa, I didn't know that happened.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
right.
does that even look like?
It's so funny because I often hear the term scouting in terms of professional modeling or something like that. But I use that term, or I borrow that term, because I was going to seemingly play parties in the Lower East Side with a group of my queer friends, and they were hosts, and I also didn't understand what that meant, but I inadvertently became a host for a industrial goth night party.
Okay.
And I had a full face of piercings. Maybe I think I had half gray, half black hair. I looked very alternative, and I was an alcoholic, and I was very rowdy. I was very wild.
Yeah.
I got up on a bar, and I started kicking all of the drinks off.
Oh yeah, I've done that before too.
I mean, yeah, it's very liberating.
It is. It's very fulfilling to hear all that glass smashing too.
Yeah, totally. It's very nice. And,
yeah.
I got approached by a person who was brought in from the hosts of queers that brought people in, and she asked me what I do for a living, and I was doing graphic design gigs at the time and making, if I was lucky, $25 to $50 as a freelance graphic design artist. And she's like, yeah, I think you would be really good at this other thing that I was like, what do you do? And she's like, oh, I work as a pro dom. And I was just like, I don't even know what that is. But she just said, it's within your personality, it seems, and you have a look that I think you might be good at this. So I was like, am I getting scouted? And I don't know. She gave me a phone number. I looked up the phone number. Weeks passed over. I looked on Craigslist for more gigs because I wasn't making any money. And it linked me to the same number that she gave me. And that was the beginning of me just at least being introduced that my lifestyle could be capitalized on.
Yeah. And your personality.
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe even your alcoholism.
A little bit. I could also talk, but starting as a dom, I learned that it was not just fun. It was a real job.
Yes.
I had to never show up drunk. I had to be very, very cognizant about the language I was using. I had to be disciplined, and I really didn't have discipline out of a work space because I was a freelancer. And lifestyle-wise, I think I lacked a lot of it. I grew up in punk culture, kind of counterculture stuff. And the only discipline I had and structure I had was in school, and that's why I am Asian too. My parents really were adamantly pushing for me to go to school. That was my ticket to New York too, was to finish school. That's kind of
Asian parents.
Yeah, Asian parents really they were we don't know why you're in New York. But as long as you're enrolled in a program that's credited, we will let you continue to be there. But they never asked about how I made my money. And as I was running low on money, and they were like, wow, you're not asking us for any money, because I started pro-doming.
Yeah.
But I was not able to tell them that.
Sure. No.
So there was a bit of guilt, a lot of guilt.
I think that's definitely an Asian thing, is the shame and the stigma of doing sex work or whatever as an Asian, we're expected to be lawyers and doctors and engineers and whatever else, and if and I mean honestly, there just aren't that many Asian sex workers. There's a few, but a lot of us have that stigma from our parents, and coming out to our parents is still kind of a trial.
Definitely.
Sorry.
No, thanks for saying that. It's so true. And I don't, have the opportunity to really express that in an industry that's that people that look like us are not present. And I'm glad that like Yin did this, because Yin's story, I'm almost like pitching Yin's story, but Yin's story is what helped me realize that there's more of us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right.
Yin's awesome.
Yeah,
like
Yin's great.
she's like a matriarch in some ways, like of our community.
Yeah.
So tell us more about, I guess your experiences in when you started as a baby dom and beyond.
So as a baby dom, so I was in the 4-year span of going to the college that I went to in my junior year. So in 2013, I started pro-doming, and in the year preceding that, meaning 2012, I was in a very, very abusive relationship, and that didn't have any consensual BDSM. But ironically, my ex-partner cheated on me with a pro-dom.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that term was, so it all started making sense as I started pro-doming.
Right.
And I mean, now I am more polyamorous, so I don't believe in cheating. I just believe in honesty and openness. However, it sparked me to really propel, like, emphatically what this title was to even be a pro-dom. So I started pro-doming, and I was like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Almost as if, like, oh, I get now why my partner was so intrigued by a person that does this for a living.
Yeah.
And when I started pro-doming, I worked at a dungeon in Midtown. The hours were great because I could make it myself. I was going to school full-time, and it was the only job that allowed me to work for 2 hours in a day that would make the same amount of money I would make in 1 week at a regular 9-to-5 type of job. And it really allowed me to synthesize everything that I've already been going through in my entire life as how old is this? I'm 30 now. 6 years ago, I was 24, 22, 20. I don't know.
Okay, in your early to mid 20s.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So up until that point, all of these like alternative lifestyle things I was doing, I was like, whoa, I'm like monetizing, not even monetizing off it, but I'm like getting to do it in a space that is safe, and there's like more things at my reach, meaning more like toys that I could play with, and
people want you to do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just for show, it's for real. Like, they actually are paying for this as a service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really remarkable.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I also, the main reason why I want to like insert that I was from Hawaii is I have never, so I'm from Hawaii, a place that's very, very POC, like very people of color oriented. And when I moved to New York, it was a culture shock for me to move in a place where I'm a minority. And then when I got into this industry, I never felt like desirable either by a white class at all.
Right. By European beauty standards.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And then I think even BDSM almost like instilled in me that I could feel desired or powerful over just my own heritage in a way that was just recognizable to me in some way. And that was like really interesting for me. But I also, as a pro-dom as an independent pro-dom, which I was doing a little bit last year, I was really adamant about how that's also triggering for me because I didn't know what that meant. I felt really like naive about it.
Wait, you didn't know what meant?
How to be like fetishized as an Asian person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting conundrum. We as Asians, we're individualistic because we live in America and we have more of an independent identity. But in Asia, like, the culture itself is a very collectivist culture, and so it values like what you can kind of sacrifice for your family or whatever. But the interesting thing about is when you come to your own individuality as an Asian is that you kind of like, you're like, oh, there's a whole other way of being where I can like really be myself. Like my parents, they don't want us to have tattoos. They want us to like look basic, I guess.
Yeah.
And so once you start kind of becoming more of an individual and tapping into your own like intuition and your own desires and your own sexuality and seeing how wild and liberating it can be, I feel like that's kind of like the meat, the juicy meat of like who you become as a dom or as a sex worker. And trying to assimilate in that way, like trying to be like all the other people that are doing sex work is not going to really work for you either. So it's like we grow up and we're brought up and we're conditioned to kind of like do this thing for the sake of family and family values and kind of the collective good. And then when we get to a certain age and leave our families, it's almost like there's too much going on. It's like overwhelming, and I think that's that can be like a threshold of like, where do I go from here? Who am I going to be? Asking yourself all these questions. And a lot of times you come to realize that you're very unique and special, which is not something that like Asian parents enforce.
No, not at all. I think my parents,
yes,
never really. What I'm grateful for is I never had the experience of my parents really like projecting their wants and needs onto me. They were actually, they were like. So my parents have a liquor store in Hawaii, and I either grew up, we're Korean. Liquor store market is a market.
Yeah,
that mostly sells liquor, and which might be why I was such an alcoholic. But anyway, they never said that to me. They never said, like, this is yours whenever you are ready. They never said to go to school for business marketing. They said, we moved to this country so you could be happy. And we moved to this country so we could be happy. And I'm so grateful for them saying that.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
They have a little bit of, like, parental tendencies, meaning they're like, well, what makes you happy? We don't know what that means, so that I don't know about that one.
Right, yeah,
but
of course.
like they were so supportive.
Yeah. Very fortunate.
Yeah, very, very fortunate. I feel really happy. But yeah, so I went to art school.
Me too.
Yeah, right. I mean, which is like, art school is interesting because it's not super structured, and like the whole realm of creativity has no rules. And to me, it was like super punk rock, like hell yeah, it's for me. But still, it is an institution, and there were all these rules. And in the time that I was in my last 2 years at the school I went to, I made only work about my time as a sex worker because I didn't have anything else taking up space in my brain, and it seemingly became the most compelling body of work that anybody in, like, my instructors, my mentors were interested in me continuing, which almost felt like a coming out story.
Okay.
So I continued it because it started getting a good response, but also it was confusing because I was like, I can't talk about this stuff. Like, I can't show my parents this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was the truth. So yeah, that's kind of like one thing, and also I like only recently started coming out as like a trans person, like a person who doesn't identify as fully female, or like a person who doesn't always feel like a full woman, which bondage has helped me so much deal with.
So do you consider yourself non-binary?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say non-binary, not gender non-conforming, which all falls under the trans umbrella of meaning like I don't sometimes feel like I was born in the right body.
Sure.
And I would say growing up in my adolescence, I was kind of deemed as like a tomboy, and I would get questioned a lot about why I would go to like queer or gay things, but also there's a lot of gay and queer overlap in like bondage things, and if I would go to a bondage thing, I would never really get second looked. But anyway, when I would like combine the two, it made sense to me, and then when I would, in short, it made sense to everybody else who's also just questioning my motives. And gender play was like the biggest and it's the most exciting for me whenever I had a client who wanted to explore cross-dressing, gender play, like slut training. So yeah, it made me feel good to be able to affirm someone else who feels not in their right body to be able to
Right.
clothe them. And I make now textile work, like I work with clothes in my art practice.
Yeah, you do felting also,
Mhm.
right? And there's quite a bit of work on your Instagram, and all of these kind of felt objects they seem somewhat like BDSM or body related,
Yeah.
and in a slightly subversive way, because it's like usually these. And it's so fascinating that you're subverting it kind of like in an opposite direction and making it like fuzzy and kind of cute,
Yeah.
you know, but like a ball gag that's, or like a blindfold or some, not blindfold doesn't really, that
I guess eye mask.
eye mask, yeah. That usually is made out of some sort of like silicone or rubber, like some, you know, more rigid material, and you make them out of felt.
Yeah.
And I just love that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's going through.
Mhm.
It's like, I call it like soft restraints.
Ooh, yeah. Restraints.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, here, I'm going to restrain you with something very soft, and I know that you don't actually want to get out of it. Like, you actually want to stay restrained, because this isn't actually even holding you.
Yeah. It's healing, you know?
Mhm.
Like, it's healing to make the work, too. I mean, I would say I definitely have a lot of anxiety living in New York City. I'm always, like, hyper vigilant or, like, really, like, aware of my surroundings. And sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's just being a person living in a busy place.
Sure, yeah.
But one of the things that made me start working in textiles was I would crochet a lot on the train to keep my hands busy.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like,
Yeah.
I should make my like bondage stuff. So I do needle felting, which is like the process of, it's gonna sound kind of violent, but like stabbing something until it becomes like a ball.
Yeah. Compressing it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's not too different than CBT.
Right. Yeah, that's so true.
So can you tell us more about, I guess, some of the trials that you experienced as a person before you got into sex work, and
Sure.
then how sex work as a pro-dom has helped you to kind of overcome these trials and to have more insight about who you are?
Totally. I would say the trials in my adolescence, in school, I would say a place where I was supposed to be disciplined but lacked it, or I was just kind of like a punk. I would say I never got bullied by my peers, but I did get criticized and challenged a lot by my teachers. And specifically, 3 in my head, I can only leave room for 3, who challenged me either by what I was wearing. I also went to a Catholic school, super, I don't want to say oppressive, but very strict.
Right.
And I wore uniforms, but I also went to summer school, and I went to additional school because my mom loves school. And even if I was getting good grades, I had to get better grades. Very Asian.
Yes. It's never good enough.
It's never good enough, exactly. So one of my teachers, some of my teachers would either challenge what I was wearing a lot. I grew up in Hawaii.
How does that? But that's not really like a part of the teacher's curriculum.
Totally,
right?
Yeah.
Like
they shouldn't be.
They
challenging me.
They should. It shouldn't matter what you're wearing.
Yeah, so I want to say it was kind of harassment. Yeah,
Sounds. I mean, I don't know what you were wearing. I know that you were a punk, and you probably like were really distracting the way that you looked. But that's your, like, as an art student, that's kind of your self-expression freedom, and you know, like, you should be able to wear whatever you want, as long as it's not like clanging everywhere. And,
I mean, in that instance, I was wearing just like a big sweater, and my teacher was like, "It's 90 degrees in Hawaii in the summertime. Why is this student wearing a big sweater? She must be hiding something." And I personally love to wear baggy clothes. I skateboarded a lot. I like to just be free and open, but I also wanted to hide my body because I'm transgender. Anyway, I would say that the ridicule that I faced as a person that had to constantly explain my gender or my self-expression, like bondage and BDSM, helped me celebrate that. Like, it helped me cross-dress, and it wasn't that I didn't have to feel like I had to constantly define stuff. It just felt so open and free, and like before I knew it, time was up, and I was like, oh no, I didn't want time to be up because I want to keep doing this. And it also welcomed me to like keep doing it on the street anyway. And maybe art school also helped facilitate that a little bit, but and like working out of the Catholic school system helped a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So you're, I guess, like there was some expectation of conformity, or and so when you found BDSM, you were like, oh, there's no need for me to conform at all.
No need to conform, but then taught me rules that I liked and respected.
Sure.
That made sense to me. Because under Catholic schools, like, guidelines, for me as a person who also is now agnostic, I just was like, these rules don't make sense. But like BDSM's disciplinary rules like made so much sense because it talked about consent. BDSM taught me like I can say no.
Did you feel like you couldn't before?
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you think that is?
For passing grades, so I could elevate to the next level, like middle school to get to high school, to get to college, to get to graduate school, like, and I still am brainwashed by that. Like, I want to go to graduate school so bad. I still want this like validation from an institution that constantly challenges me, but still gives me quote unquote opportunities, because they need students to fill their chairs. But also like bondage let me do role play as like a teacher. It gave me like empathy of like how to have a performative student, so a sub of mine, perform to please me, to make me understand why I'm being so strict, or why any of my teachers were so strict on me. I mean, granted, I want to make clear, I was never like sexually harassed by any of my teachers. Seemingly, even that one that was like, that teacher told me to like take my sweater off in front of everybody because they thought I was hiding something in my pockets. So they just thought I was like a sus punk or something, but I really wasn't doing anything. Just saying that like bondage taught me consent. It taught me the ability of self-expression, and it also like gave me empathy to understand why anybody could be so critical. And I think my teachers who were harassing me were more phobic. Like they were just like they were fearful of me in some way. They or people of my identity. Maybe they were transphobic. Maybe they were just like, I wouldn't even say like intellect phobic, because one of my teachers is like, you're not smart enough to write a paper this good. You're gonna stay back in class and like write it again. And then, like that's something I would tell to a sub, is like write it again until it's to my standard. I almost didn't pass 8th grade because my English teacher said that my English wasn't good enough, but when I turned in a paper that was good enough, he said I wasn't smart enough. So, yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm a really good writer. Anyway, that was like one thing that bondage really instilled in me, that I am smart enough. I am good enough, like, and I'm worthy.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And how does bondage do that for you? Like, what is it about bondage that is so, I guess, like, from, in my opinion, bondage is strangely a form of liberation, because it is restrictive, and so you can kind of relax into it, knowing that it's going to hold you. And so what, like, what kind of things went on in your head to turn everything, to kind of transform these thoughts into positives?
I don't know. I think definitely there's a sense of empowerment, desire that somebody would choose me to even enact something that I have been through as well. I felt honored,
You feel seen.
I feel seen, totally. I felt so seen when somebody would just select me based off of something they saw in themselves. Or usually I get requests, or I used to get requests where I was like, oh, I've been through this in my childhood too. Let's work it out together. If I ever got a request that was so out of my range, meaning an experience I've not yet had, then I would do more research on it. I would read psychology texts like crazy.
Okay.
I also used to work in childcare. I no longer work in childcare, but I used to work in childcare. I was like, oh, I've definitely like changed diaper before. Like,
you know, like do the adult baby thing.
Yeah. It was like I've done this before in a different realm. It's just with a new person, and it made me feel so respected because I felt so disrespected in my childhood, and ignored. So it felt like I was now given this opportunity to be this caretaker for somebody who also used to feel that way, and we're all healing together. Like I felt like we were healing each other.
Yeah, that's very much. I feel like that's very much how it works. In fact, that's one of the principles of Reiki. Is like when you are healing other people, you're also healing yourself, or when you're healing yourself, you're also healing other people. It's a very symbiotic kind of and mutually beneficial kind of loving act. So when you're talking about bondage, is that being a top or bottom or both?
I don't ever really get to bottom, but I just had a experience with Tamara and Yin at MoMA, and I was like, wow, this is great. I just kept going like, wow, I feel so great, and I feel like I understand now why people bottom.
Yeah.
It feels good.
It's like all the attention is on you.
Yeah.
And people, you know, whoever the rope top is checking in with you and making sure that you're comfortable, and so that they can, you know, work around you in some way, because they want the bondage to work. They don't want to have to, like, you know, put you in some position and not check on you and then have to take you out of it right away. Like, they want to work with you and your body and your preferences and whatever's going on. And I think that kind of attention, that like super focused attention, is actually like, it's more than just a physical embrace. It's like, I'm embracing you with my mind.
Yeah, I felt very cared for. And I feel like when I just see like photos of bondage on, like, say, Instagram or something, it looks kind of intense, like in a way that's like, are they okay? Yeah, they're fine. If they're in good care, they're great. They're doing great.
Reiki practitioner. And I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I think that is actually very relative to, like, Reiki is also a form of energy work that I think lends itself to BDSM very effectively, because it's pretty subtle, and you could just, like, you could throw somebody in a body bag and do Reiki on them. But it's really about, like, transference of energy and touch, and that's a big part of BDSM, in my opinion, is that focused attention. Yeah. So can you tell us anything about, yes,
with consent,
of course,
for sure.
About any sort of, I guess, like, traumas from your past that have come up, and that you've been able to work through with either sex work or BDSM or both?
Yeah, I would say it's all kind of related to school, because I spent so much time in school, but I spent a lot of time in school. That at one point when I was younger, I used to be, very briefly, a self-harmer. And I quickly realized that was not for me, because I didn't know what I was doing. And that's like when self-harming gets dangerous, and I spent a lot of my time on the internet, in reality, or off the internet, really trying to decipher the major differences between BDSM and harm and violence, like huge differences, like major differences.
Do you mind if I ask you why you were self-harming? Like, did you ever?
Sure. Okay. I was self-harming mostly because I wasn't getting good grades.
Okay. Wow, school really was your life.
Yeah, it really was.
Okay.
I was a book nerd. I really was, because I wanted to go to, I grew up in Hawaii. I loved it there, but I wanted to, like, see the rest of the world. I wanted to move to New York, and I did, through school. But I felt very threatened that lifeline was going to be cut if I didn't get to the next level, that I started to feel, I put a lot of importance on grades, that when I wasn't getting these good grades, and I was even doing additional work to get good grades, I started to can I say this? Is that okay? Yeah, I started to cut myself.
Yeah, you can totally say that.
Okay. I'm sorry, like trigger warning, this is...
Yeah, hey everybody.
Yeah.
We're talking about a personal healing journey, and I probably should have done this way earlier, but there may be some topics of discussion and more specific examples that are considered trigger warnings or are triggering for some of you. I can't say specifically which ones, but just wanted to let you guys know that halfway through. So you were cutting yourself.
Yes.
Because you were not getting the kind of grades that you were hoping to get.
Yes. Because it all linked in my head that it was my ticket. Like, grades were a ticket for me to get a scholarship, for me to go to college, for me to see the world, like, blah, blah, But I didn't do that as much anymore, so I started getting piercings.
But you said that you were self-harming for a very short amount of time, and then you decided to do some research as to what the difference between that and BDSM was.
Yeah.
So you look to BDSM as almost like a ruler of how to do it right.
Yeah, okay. Totally. I was like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. I could actually die, and then if I die, I can't go to school.
Right. You can't do much if you're dead.
Yeah. And I was like,
you can do ghost things.
Yeah. But what I realized from that experience is, like, I like the sensation of being able to, like, get out of my head and, like, focus on my own body, but I wanted to do it in a way that was, one, I wouldn't have any markings, because I didn't want to talk about it.
Right.
And then two, I also didn't want to be reminded of a scar.
Sure.
Like, I sometimes do this thing, and I was like, wait, and yeah, I could ultimately really, really hurt myself to a point of death, so stop. Like, I was like, don't do it no more. And then I started doing some online research.
Wow. Well, you really had the, I guess, the mental and emotional wherewithal to stop it.
Yeah.
Because I think that some people get into an addictive loop of whatever that feeling is. It makes them feel alive, or it releases the pressure, and they're not looking to anything else to alleviate that pain.
Right.
And so they just keep going back to that same thing.
Right.
But you really were like, oh, let me make sure I don't kill myself.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think sometimes I mean, it's overlap of what that awareness was needle play for me. Because I did like the pricking sensation of my skin, like being reminded of my flesh is my flesh, and this is what happens when I have sensational pricks along my body. No scars. No scars. Yeah, if you do it right, and I can make it look pretty, and
and it's artistic.
Totally. Yeah. But like, I'm so scared of needles. But that was another thing. Like, I overcome a fear every single time.
Oh wow.
I'm scared of certain kinds of needles. Now I'm desensitized to them, but I'm scared of, like, getting blood drawn.
Oh.
I really hate that.
Really?
Yeah, I really hate it.
I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm totally okay with it, even though I wasn't traumatized by being having blood drawn, but I did have kind of a strange experience with it. But we're not talking about me. Did I see that you had photos of yourself on hooks?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot I did that.
So yeah, there's photos of Domina Jin on hooks in her back, being hung, suspended. Can you talk a little bit about that and what led to that?
Yeah. So I did some research. I mean, I've been in, I would say, alternative communities for a bit, and I used to have I have a friend back in Hawaii who dated a person that used to do it on a performative level, like swing across the crowd at, like, shows. And I was just like, whoa, that's really wild. And I would never be able to do that. But I found a community of folks here in New York City that do it through a private session and through an event called Skin NYC. They're actually having an event very soon. And I was so blown away in the way that they presented this particular type of practice. It's also a practice that's, like, rooted very heavily in, like, Southeast Asia, in Native American culture. Those are just Mexican culture. and I remember when reading it that it was primarily reserved for men. So I was like,
Interesting.
yeah, as like a sign of like strength and vitality.
Oh, right. I remember it was a rite of passage for boys.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. And like, I just, again, I'm trans. I never really came into that identity until like, not until recently. I've always been trans, but coming out publicly about it. But I signed up for this skin project, or I reached out to this place or this collective called Anchors Away. And I was like, I'm ready to announce, like, I feel like my madness is my rite of passage to announce that I am trans and I'm going to do this activity.
Yeah.
Also, I was like, I wasn't fasting, but I was an alcoholic and I got sober just to do this.
Is this something that they require?
No, I did it as a self-disciplinary thing.
Wow. So you really like applied discipline from school into a lot of other things that were kind of like BDSM related.
Yeah.
That's great.
Totally. Thanks. Yeah, I guess I never really made that kind of, wow, yeah.
I will connect all the dots for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I got sober. I ended up losing a lot of weight. I used to be about 75 to 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I had a lot of fear that I was too heavy to suspend. And then they were like, no way. So they were really welcoming. They were really nice. And I suspended, and it was so transformative. Like, oh my God. I really felt like I had more than, I would say, like a spiritual experience. It didn't feel like it was even for me. It felt something beyond that. And I feel like it's really difficult for me to find any sort of semblance of semblance of like connection to nature or something other than people here in New York City. And once I suspended, I swear to you, I couldn't even hear people anymore. I heard a tree whistling back and forth more. I would see like glows of like white light around like things that had no life, and like things that had no life had life, and I fell in love.
Sounds like you had a psychedelic experience.
Yeah, I did.
Through that. Was it painful? Like that was kind of what pushed you into that state of mind?
Yes, I would say like the piercing portion was really actually not that painful. I have had over 20 piercings in my face. I have other piercings down my body. So as far as like that portion of the anxiety, I'm so desensitized to being pierced. But the part of getting off the floor and being elevated off the ground was so hard for me to do, and it took one person to just remind me to relax. And they really said it in like a domineering way.
What is that something that you do yourself?
Suspend, like get off the floor. Yeah.
Would you like some water?
Yes, please.
Okay, so answer that question while I get some water.
Thank you.
Tell us more about the suspension.
So when you are first getting hooked in your back, you have to elevate yourself off the floor. So similar to you have to just jump off, or you have to submit. You have to submit to this. I had to submit to my own fear that I would not. I have to kept telling myself that I would not. My skin wouldn't rip off.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Then, so do you give the cue, like, for the people to say, go up?
Thank you for water.
Yeah.
Thank you. That you do this. This indicates like I'm ready, and then you do this if you're like too much pressure. Okay. And it's literally your own skin, your own like muscles are lifting you up. And the next day my abs were super strong. I was like, I don't have abs.
That's interesting.
I thought it would be in my back. Like I thought I was working my back up, but you're holding your core up. You're holding your whole body up. And it's more for me, it was more in my core and my thighs.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And then the second time I suspended, I wasn't swinging. I was just sitting. I think I was in lotus position, so I had hooks in my calves, my thighs, my back, and I was on a platform, and then somebody took the platform from underneath me, and then I was holding myself up.
Whoa.
And I was also tied. I had a heart monitor that was connected to a sculpture that I was sitting in.
Whoa.
That would beat, that would blink whenever my heart would pump. So whenever I'd get excited, it would just like blink a lot.
Wow,
Yeah.
like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, it felt very psychedelic inside and also outside, and it felt very artful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds like a piece of performance art.
Yeah.
That last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so what else would you like to share with us regarding, I guess because I think you had mentioned something about an abusive relationship. And so can you talk about that a little bit and I guess the pathway out of that?
Sure. I was in an abusive relationship consensually for 9 months. I have like a weird, maybe it's an OCD thing where I do things in threes.
Okay.
And if it's not a divisible number by 3, like I stop.
Okay.
So I gave it 9 months, but it took me about 4 years to actually really like relinquish myself from this person. And seemingly so, this person still finds ways back into my life rather. Anyway, that abusive relationship, I would just say that was my first relationship ever. I would consider myself a late bloomer. Like I never had relationships in middle school because I was always in school. I was like reading books all the time, and I just never felt like dateable. And I was a weirdo. I was like a really big freaky weirdo.
Yeah, join the club.
Yeah, right. So I moved to New York. I met somebody, and I was just so excited to meet anybody in New York. And I was just like, I'll take any friends. Totally not a good idea if you ever think about moving to New York. Like, like find
tons
your
of predators out here.
Oh yeah, very much. And I was young. I was like 19. Anyway, that relationship did have a lot to do with unconsensual forms of not even discipline, sadomasochism, I would say, where humiliation was really. I mean, so I wrote this. I always get the sado and the masochism portion. A sadist is somebody who derives pleasure out of inflicting pain or humiliation.
Yes.
So, and then a masochist is like deriving pleasure out of somebody who, or like out of yourself, humiliation. Right?
Masochist usually derives pleasure from being inflicted pain upon.
Being inflicted pain upon. Okay.
Yeah. So like ideally, somebody who is a sadist, an ethical sadist, would want to find a person who's also a masochist, and they can have consensual sadomasochistic interactions. There are definitely people who are sadistic and who are considered sadists that do things unconsensually, non-consensually, in all forms, whether they're sexual or not. And those are people that you should look out for.
Yeah, totally. I think you could find. I would say that relationship, if anything, was not for nothing. It taught me indications of that kind of a person.
Did you know this about the person? Like, this person was a sadist then? Like,
seemingly so. I would say a mental sadist. Yeah,
so,
and then turned into physical sadist.
Okay. Yeah. So they derive pleasure from causing like psychological pain and manipulation, and you were maybe too young to really understand this.
I think I was also conditioned to normalize it because I had some. I don't want to say it's an abusive upbringing because maybe I was just too not like aware that it was like within my upbringing until I moved to New York. That I was like, oh, this is fine. Like New Yorkers are just tough.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
Until it took some other folks to be like this is not okay.
Right. So then how did you get out of that?
It took me several tries. The first one was actually moving out of New York City, and I mentioned before I moved to New York by way of California from Hawaii. I crawled my way here. I wasn't like ready to just leap in, and I moved back to California. I became an art teacher. I really was just like cutting this relationship off, being like I'm starting new and whatever. I also saw that there was a big bondage scene there too, so I was like I'm ready. But
so wait, you went to California and then to New York, and then you went back to California? Okay.
I did. I moved to New York for a scholarship for a school that I didn't graduate from. I lost that scholarship. I was going through so much. then I moved back to California to be an art teacher and just be a worker amongst workers. And then, you know, they were like, hey, if you want to still be a teacher, you have to go to school.
Right.
So I went back to school.
So you just left the state, and that's how you got out of the relationship
for the time being.
For the time being.
And then I moved back, and then I didn't have housing. So I
so you had to get back with this person?
Seemingly so. I had housing through the school I went to. And because I guess I'm wild, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm self-deprecating when I say that. I was in a relationship that was really abusive. That partner got me kicked out of my housing, and said that I was an alcoholic that was trying to kill themselves. And I would even say in that school I spent a lot of time fighting or defending myself against the stigma that I am a self-harming alcoholic and drug addict when I'm like couldn't talk about what I was really doing, which was just trying to go to class, trying to make some money. And I feel like I spent a lot of time defending my lifestyle when I was not any of those things.
Okay. But you had said that you were an alcoholic.
I was.
For a certain periods, but it wasn't that period.
No.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, I would say I had substance abuse problems, and if I was getting proper help, meaning therapy, I was going through a lot of therapy, it was still at the whim of a person that I had to keep fighting to leave. And that person was winning, I guess, because they got me kicked out of housing, and to a point that I had to go back to live with them for the time being, until I finally got my own apartment. And like I was seemingly, I am doing well. I'm doing a lot better. I would say I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor of this. And I started making my own money enough through everything I've been talking about to be able to be self-sustaining.
What elements of BDSM helped you, or sex work helped you kind of propel yourself out of this psychic trap?
Sure. Definitely that I'm not one. There was a lot of verbal abuse. I'm not any of those things, because I would literally go. He would say that I was fat, ugly, and stupid, and I would go to work and I was like, "Wow, you're beautiful, and you're an intellectual, and you are like so creative." You know, I would get validated and told that everything that I would leave in this other abusive relationship was unreal. Like, you know, and I started to believe it. There was another thing, like just the type of, once my abusive relationship started turning physically abusive, because I was like, whoa, this is like not consensual. Like I learned in bondage, like there's so many checking ins. Like, is this okay? There's measurements of sensation and thresholds.
Right.
In relationships and partnerships where you don't have those check-ins, it is abuse. And so I learned that, like, and I didn't realize that I was unconsensually being abused so much until I started doming. I was like, oh, you're asking me if I'm okay? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, wow. And you're asking how my day was? Nice.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Yeah, it's really amazing the basic principles that BDSM can teach people about what they've been missing.
Yeah.
Like how they've been mistreated.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because it seems to happen a lot. And you know, I don't know that sanctuary is necessarily the right word, but I think that in a lot of ways, like, people do find sanctuary in BDSM because like with the cutting, you know, it's like you can have knife play or you know, needle play, and that has a similar sensation, but it's done in a very controlled, consensual, and careful, caring way, where it's not like, I'm just going to come at you with a knife.
Right.
It's you know, it's like, are you okay? Is this okay? I'm going to go a little deeper now. I'm going to make a long line now, you know? Yeah, so do you have any intention of getting back into sex work?
Yeah, I do. I miss it a lot. It really has become such a integral part of my identity. And even when I'm not a pro at it, meaning I'm not doing it for money exchange. I'm not I would say I'm like an activist for it. I'm an advocate for it. I'm always talking about it, and it's trickling into like my relationships. Meaning, I have better relationships now, like interpersonal ones, friendships,
right?
Work, like regular jobs, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does it trickle into your regular jobs?
I would say consent, like because I work in tattooing and piercing now, and I'm also a freelance artist.
Right.
I feel like things are on my time. Like I consented to this time.
Yes. Consent is surprisingly basic in so many and fundamental in so many ways. Like in just being human. And I know that word has existed for a long time, but I don't know that it's been used in this context, like quite so avidly as it is in BDSM. And so I think that, you know, the rest of the world definitely could learn about it a lot more and talk about it a lot more with their kids.
Yeah.
Also, because that's something that I've noticed also is like when people are, you know, people with kids are like, oh, go give, you know, Uncle Bob a hug, and the kid's like, I don't want to give Uncle Bob a hug. I don't consent to, you know, like, or I don't consent to being hugged by Uncle Bob. And it's just like you're teaching children that, you know, not, like, their boundaries are not valid.
Right.
And so how are they going to grow up believing that their boundaries are valid?
Totally.
So, yeah, consent. And is there anything else that you would like to share with our wonderful, patient, polite audience?
I think I just really want to advocate that if anybody does practice BDSM on a non-professional level, meaning no monetary exchange, like please just like don't be afraid to ask questions, don't be afraid to be vocal about your wants and needs, and like, I don't know, be consensual about everything, be intentional about everything. I also want to also really say that bondage, BDSM is not just it's not just a job, you know, it's
a lifestyle.
It really is a lifestyle. And just because you take it on as a lifestyle doesn't mean you have to like every little thing, but like it's great. Like I would recommend I would recommend everybody trying it, and at their own pace too. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So since you guys have been so patient, now is your chance to ask Domina Jia questions. Somebody earlier had asked about your necklace.
Oh, this?
Yes.
This is from a hardware store. I'm very like, I'm very utilitarian fashionista, I would say. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, thanks, Caesar, for tuning in. He's such a good one.
Aw.
But why did you choose those elements, and what is, like, to me that looks like the remnants of your punk days.
Yeah, I would say so. I put a lot of my keys on here.
Oh, wait, on your neck?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good place to put them to not lose them.
Totally. I lose keys all the time.
It's very practical. Everybody should try it.
Somebody actually just asked me if I bought this from a store, which I do know, like a brand that I actually like a lot, but I can't afford it. Or
is it Hot Topic? No, I'm just kidding.
I still love Hot Topic.
I know, me too. It's really fun to go in there.
It is really fun. But I really just got this at a hardware store.
That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I attach my wallet and my keys onto it all the time, so I don't lose those two things.
I have a flogger handle that I put my keys on. Nice. It's actually something sadly gave me. It was a part of a set of Florentine floggers, and as much as I love Florentine floggers, I find that the handles for these are not ideal. So I just turned them into a keychain.
Nice. I think that's also what's so cool about BDSM, or like the aesthetic of it is really creative and it's really useful.
Yeah, because there's so many things that you can use that are very utilitarian and practical for BDSM, like even kitchen items, you know, like or like anything really. If you can get imaginative and creative, and you don't have to like buy special tools or expensive toys. You know, you can just kind of like, I don't know, use some, what is that called? Clothesline to tie somebody up.
And floss. I used to use floss.
Really?
Yeah, it's probably because it smells good.
Oh. What do you use floss on? What do you tie with floss?
I use floss to cut cake. In kitchen overlap. And also to like tie up.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's really durable.
It is. It's very durable, but it also, like, you have to use quite a bit or else it cuts into the skin. Right?
Yeah. That's true. You have to make it a little thick.
Yeah. Maybe floss isn't the best.
No.
But if you're in a pinch, on a camping trip.
Yeah, on a camping trip.
All right, so do you have any special announcements or projects or performances or, I don't know, travels or anything? Like, if this was a few weeks ago, it would have been really great to announce that PS1 performance. But are you continuing on with anything?
I am doing a needle play demonstration / performance for Math Magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yay. So we've had Mackenzie on here, too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And where is that?
It's going to be at a venue that one's pending. It has the word scorpion in it at some point.
Okay.
I know, or somewhere in the awning or in the description. Oh. But if you follow my Instagram or Math Magazine's Instagram, I think right now Math Magazine's primary Instagram is mathmag.nyc.
Okay.
Then they have more info, or you could keep checking mine. The venue will be in Brooklyn on April 13th. That's all I got so far. Yeah.
So, for anybody that wants to check up on your social media, how do we find you?
My Instagram is Domina Jia, DOMINAJIA.
Mm-hmm.
That's my primary place.
Okay.
As of yet.
Okay. And then you don't have a website or anything?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Yeah.
All right. And so if anybody has any more questions, we're going to stay on for maybe another minute. Hopefully you can tap it out on your fingers quick enough. Next week we will have an interview with Mistress Roxanne. And that will be kind of like a normal interview. And then I believe the week after that is an interview with Dr. Caroline Hartridge, who is an advocate for holistic health and cannabis use. And that's going to be kind of like a more health and wellness oriented interview. And so if you guys are around, please tune in the next couple of Mondays. We'll be around. And yes. So, yeah, cannabis is like making its way into mainstream media and whatever else with all its health benefits. And I think that's wonderful. And that's all I'm going to say about it right now. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, I have one more thing to
plug.
Oh, yes,
please.
I'm going to be tabling my artwork at a Trans Visibility Day. I just got an email about this day, so I don't have all the details. I think it's next Saturday.
Will that information be on your Instagram?
Sure.
Okay.
I will make sure.
Great.
Yeah.
So make sure you check in with Domina Jia's Instagram. And thank you guys, thank you Caesar, for tuning in, being so polite, asking such thoughtful questions, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.